and now we're supposed to believe that he just like, oh, I couldn't look in any further. I had no context to figure out what Epstein was accused of. Always the staunch defenders of Israel. Nothing to see here, nothing to look at. Everything she's saying is an anti-Semitic conspiracy until the emails drop. And Jeffrey Epstein, who worked on behalf of the Rothschilds, according to him, to credit themselves with having created which nation state? Oh, right, Israel.
There's a dark truth revealed from the latest batch of Epstein files, and Candace Owens sheds some light on that here, and let's just say what we've learned happens to implicate a lot of people very closely connected with this administration and Trump himself, and reveal a whole host of lies. She talks about what this means and when we can see the perp walks of all these supervillains that collaborated and served Epstein and his crimes. So let's take a look at that. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
Israel, the same nation state that is having a bunch of women say that they were ritualistically abused in a forest by rabbis. That's happening in the Knesset right now, that nation state, saying that they were 3, 4 years old when this happened. He's saying, those are my bosses, the Rothschilds. And here is a brief, but by no means an extensive coverage video that was put together by, I assume this guy must be Goy, right? Goy? Is he Goy? TikToker Contrarian put this together. Take a listen.
Israel is mentioned twice as much as Donald Trump in the new documents. Here he is discussing with Roger Schank, a Jewish American academic and hedge fund worker, saying Jews create vast fortunes by manipulating markets and creating financial speculation and exploiting labor. He says, let the Goyim deal in the real world. In a discussion with the Rothschild family, Epstein says if they overthrew the Ukrainian government, there would be great opportunities. The Rothschild family paid Epstein $25 million for certain algorithms. While talking to Peggy Seigel, August 7th of 2010, she asks if an event is going to be 100% Jewish. He says no, they'll have Goyim in abundance. But don't worry, they're just brilliant wasps from JP Morgan. Joshua Finkelstein, BlackRock's Larry Finkelstein's son, is accused of not having any respect for non-Jews, seeing them as not human. This is from his ex-girlfriend, Svetlana. He pressures her to have an abortion. In 2017, Epstein has a conversation talking about if you want to hire the best people, you have to hire only Jews. Only hire those who can prove they are genetically Jewish. Maria Farmer, one of the first victims to come out and name Epstein.
I wasn't allowed to go get food. And when I called Ghislaine and asked why I couldn't eat there, she said, it's a Jewish country club. You're not Jewish. They're not going to serve you. They, honest to God, think their DNA is better than everybody else's.
Said that their operation was motivated by Jewish supremacy.
And just think about that. If you or I had talked about this or entertained the suggestion that that's what these people were saying behind closed doors, the elites in control of society, probably playing a blackmail operation on behalf of Mossad or the IDF, we'd just be accused of being anti-Semitic conspiracy theorists. But this is how people like Epstein and his ilk talk behind closed doors. And I hate to say, it seems like the Trump administration is taking this line by enacting new DEI programs just for Jews and, criticizing people just for criticizing Israel, having a problem with that above everything else after they campaigned in the 2024 election season for free speech, saying, hey, we need to end all DEI. Well, it's just turned in a different direction. And what a lot of these releases show is what they've been calling us conspiracy theorists for years, since 2019, at least, for saying. And yeah, Maria Farmer, who you saw there at the end, was one of Epstein's original victims, original accusers, as far as we know. Telling the truth about the atrocities committed toward her in the mid-90s and never really getting anywhere with the authorities in the FBI and in the New York authorities. And her story was written about in Vanity Fair, but Epstein didn't go down for crimes until like 10 years later after that. And he didn't even really go down. He got the sweetheart deal. So yeah, all this is just nonsense, and it shows the perverted nature of how these people think about you and I. And I dare say that's racism, but they're not going to call it that because they're part of a protected class that the United States government serves above all other classes, it seems, especially in foreign policy.
Anybody gonna say that that's not real anymore? Hey, really bad time, Rob McCoy, who wrote a public letter accusing me of being anti-Semite. Can you some of that energy towards Israel, your masters? Because I won't have them be mine. I can't. I recognize this for what it is. It's using money, finances to whip people into shape, so to speak. I know, like I said, the true history of the slave trade, and the amazing ability to write themselves out every time is really special. It's super unique. And like I said, if you want to know what happened to America, you have to start to trace the lineage of the B'nai B'rith lodges. Look at, probably books, obviously, that you would never, ever be able to read in high school. You have to start to conduct research independently. Ben Shapiro's family ancestors, B'nai B'rith, okay? Barry Weiss, B'nai B'rith. That's why when you see these differences and amongst Jewish people, they want you to make the mistake of thinking that this is what all Jews are doing, and it's not true. Okay, there's such a fundamental difference between a Dave Smith and a Ben Shapiro. I have a suspicion that I could quit working. Like if I just texted Dave Smith and I said, I don't want to be friends or ever work together in any capacity ever again, I gotta feel like he would just let me move on in my life. I got this suspicion that he wouldn't. But you could see that there's like something else brewing when it comes to people like Barry Weiss and Ben Shapiro. They can't let these things go.
Yeah, it's their top prerogative. That's how they prioritize their entire worldview, is on the basis of serving this foreign country. And she's absolutely right, too. There's a hell of a lot of difference between people like Dave Smith and Norman Finkelstein and Aaron Mate and Max Blumenthal and Jeffrey Sachs and Glenn Greenwald, and then Mark Levin and Laura Luber and Ted and all these people that are Zionists that are Jewish. I almost said Ted Cruz. I mean, he acts like he's a total, zealot for Zionism. He did, at least in his interview with Tucker Carlson. But there's a very big difference, of course. We know that. But you see this come through as if it, should just be shielded by all the corporate media. But they try to bury this under the rug, but thankfully independent voices are willing to talk about this. And we see this more and more in the files and how they're treated. And the stories coming out about the files, it's nothing in regard to this stuff. Jeffrey Epstein talking about Goyim, all of his connections to Israel, which have been thoroughly documented, and his connections to Ehud Barak, Israeli spies like Yoni Koren, his involvement in repurposing the Iran-Contra planes, his, experiences arranging security agreements between Israel and other governments. None of that's really come to light. Why? Well, it's because this is a protected class, because America serves this country's interests, even though that's the country that the U.S. is subsidizing, not the other way around.
Because they view themselves as supposed to be over us, right? And they also won't criticize people like Jeffrey Epstein. Or this would have all been buried. I mean, if you just look to what the public was trying to say, they've even been trying to rehabilitate some of these people. Alan Dershowitz, it's unbelievable that this man has gone through so many people like Mark Levin and, of course, Barry Weiss, always the staunch defenders of Israel. Nothing to see here, nothing to look at. People, this was going viral this weekend, people rightfully going back and examining Ben Shapiro, once again, working diligently, as he did with Pizzagate, to tell people to dismiss the Epstein emails because he had sources and everything we needed to know was already out. Take a listen.
She went out there and claimed there were tens of thousands of hours of tape. There are, by the way, but they are child pornography. The reason the FBI is not releasing them is because those tapes do not include underage people with third parties on Epstein Island. That is not what the tapes are.
Yeah, that's what Pam Bondi alleges after saying initially, and you can check the record on this, that there were tapes of Epstein molesting children. And by the way, never release that. Don't release that for us to see. Some of these people are making the twisted logic of saying, hey, you want to see this stuff released? No, we don't. We want things documented such that the perpetrators face jail time, that it gets revealed to the public, that we learn about the connections.
Hey, I also have sources in the federal government who are covering this stuff and have seen the documents. Hey, those tapes are just child porn. That's all. That's what they are. That's why the FBI is not releasing them. Hey, as far as the Epstein list, what I have been told by my sources is that there is no Epstein list, that basically there's a black book of Jeffrey Epstein contacts. And the vast majority of those contacts are already out there publicly. That's why you know names like Prince Andrew or Alan Dershowitz or some of the names that have been mentioned here, those contacts, there is no evidence, according to the DOJ and the FBI, and again, that's public, there's no evidence that any of those third parties were having girls trafficked to them.
Of course, yeah, let's just trust the DOJ and FBI, the same organization and state apparatus that covered this thing up for 11 months, lied about it, at one point said it was a Democratic hoax, at one point said that the files don't exist, at one point saying, Trump saying, why are we still talking about Epstein, at one point saying, hey, you have to pay attention to these floods in Houston instead of this. Yeah, let's just take their word for it. No, what the files show is that there are a lot of people implicated. This assertion that just because there's not like an Excel sheet, like an Excel document that is a client list with all the illicit services they were provided by Epstein, that doesn't exist in a singular document, that no one's at fault here, no one, participated in these crimes is just wrong. The paper trail tells us a very different story, Ben. And I'm sorry, it seems like your masters in the Israeli government were part of controlling it. Ehud Barak, Robert Maxwell serving as the protege of sorts for Epstein's connections with Ari Ben-Menashe, who said that this was blackmail. All the connections that we know, including Epstein divulging to a New York Times reporter that he was working for intelligence. But no, let's just pretend that doesn't exist, sweep it under the rug, because it puts egg on the face of your favorite foreign regime.
And that is not evidence that was made clear, certainly, to the DOJ or the FBI. Here is Tucker then asserting that it was actually Mossad. Again, without evidence, not a shock. Of course, this is where Tucker was going. This has become the hot speculation on the internet, is without evidence. You say that Mossad was running Jeffrey Epstein. When I say without evidence, I mean without evidence. Naftali Bennett, the former Israeli prime minister, said, quote, as a former Israeli prime minister, with the Mossad having reported directly to me, I say to you with 100% certainty, the accusation that Jeffrey Epstein somehow worked for Israel or the Mossad running a blackmail ring is categorically and totally false. This accusation is a lie being peddled by prominent online personalities such as Tucker Carlson, pretending they know things they don't. And in fact, I followed up with the former Prime Minister, Naftali Bennett, and what he told me is that Mossad has not been active in the United States or against the United States since the Jonathan Pollard scandal of 1987. When a U.S. Army contractor who's actually working for the Navy revealed classified information to the Israeli government. He was prosecuted by the United States government and ended up in prison.
I didn't watch this whole clip. This is
years.
hilarious.
Yeah, let's just take it from a former Israeli prime minister. They don't spy on Americans. The Pollard thing was the last time. And if you see how Naftali Bennett worded that tweet, by the way, he said that Epstein didn't work for Mossad or Israel, and the most common allegation is that he was an Israeli asset and access agents of sorts that wouldn't be, paid out of the Israeli treasury directly as an employee, a badge-carrying member of Mossad, but certainly it seems like he was connected to Israeli intelligence. He says without evidence, but we've talked about the piles of evidence that show that. The fact that he was writing speeches for Ehud Barak when he was the Minister of Defense, that he was participating in security arrangements on behalf of Israel, that he was involved in a blackmail operation. Again, according to Ari Ben-Menashe, the Israelis tried to ruin his life too, but he was vindicated in court when he showed that they were wrong about him and his clearance in the Israeli apparatus of intelligence. All this is out there. Drop Site News covered a lot of it, and a lot of other stories showing these close ties. He's going to deny it. And by the way, take a look at this. It's not like this is the first time there's an allegation about this. 1987's the last time. Well, it turns out that Israel used Stingray devices on President Trump back in 2019. You can still find this story. This is designed to take information from cell phones and use it. This was a big story in September of 2019. And you also see that Boris Johnson accused Netanyahu of doing this. Yeah, I mean, he's not an American, of course, but this just corroborates the narrative. They're still doing this to countries that are aligned with the United States or the United States, as it showed in this document. And also, we know that Howard Lutnick lied recently, too. We'll talk about that in a second, but let's just get right back to this.
And so Israel since then has not spied on the United States with Mossad.
Okay, guys. Well, there you have it. It's just, I don't know how he does it with a straight face. I'm just like, Well, anyway, guys, there's millions of emails, but don't even it's like Mossad hasn't been doing nothing. I know it seems weird because BB's like always here or whatever, and we seem to be doing their bidding everywhere. But the Mossad just like said in the 90 days, they were like, I'm a chill. And
Yeah, let's hibernate for 40 years and not try to extract this data that we got from the US and had no repercussions for. Let's just do that. Even after Pollard, no ties with Israel cut. Yeah, we're just going to hibernate. Yeah, please, please.
they haven't done a single thing here at all. I know it might look that way. Miriam Adel said she doesn't even know their name. She doesn't know who they are, actually. She's doing her thing, and she's giving Trump $200 million, but it ain't got nothing to do with the Mossad. So I just wanted to bring you that stunning report from Ben Shapiro. Thank you for clarifying, Benjamin. But Peter Thiel, his emails went up there, and it ain't good for J.D. Vance. I'll tell you that right away. I think this is plausibly the biggest scandal to come out of I guess I should say, the most consequential thing to come out of these emails that I can see right now. There's millions to go through. So we'll have more and we'll be reporting on more. But J.D. Vance, he was they had him there, right? Like he's going to be running in 2028. He's not been leaning super into the Zionist stuff. He seems to be abstaining, has been quiet during the whole Epstein thing. It definitely didn't seem like he agreed with it. But everyone knows that Peter Thiel effectively funded J.D. Vance's career. He probably had something to do with J.D. Vance getting the deal with Netflix to do his book, A Hillbilly Elegy, I think it was called.
Yes, certainly. In all accounts, he orchestrated the political rise of J.D. Vance. Remember, Peter Thiel is the founder of Palantir in the early 2000s, closely tied to the CIA, and the CIA was their only client for, I believe, 5 or 6 years. Played a big role in elevating J.D. Vance to vice president after only, 2 years in the Senate. He worked for Peter Thiel's venture capital firm called Mithril. And we're supposed to just ignore these associations, too, and the denials that Peter Thiel said on the Joe Rogan show when he said, oh, yeah, I didn't know he was a sexual offender. Just insane.
And Peter Thiel, who was mentioned early on as being someone who was friends with Epstein, went on to Rogan at the end of last year and sort of intimated that he really didn't know Epstein that well, but spoke to him mainly just about math because he knew about taxes and how to avoid them. Take a listen.
I met Epstein a few times as well, and I think...
How'd you get introduced?
It was Reid Hoffman in Silicon Valley introduced us in 2014, but it was basically, and I didn't ask enough questions about it.
When you were introduced to him,
Yeah.
how was he described to you?
He was described as one of the smartest tax people in the world,
Interesting.
and I probably was my moral weakness that I.
Well,
didn't
how
like
could
paying
you have known
taxes.
back then? He had never been arrested.
No, this was 2014. It was post arrest.
Oh, so his arrest was the first arrest, right?
Yeah,
Which was like 2000.
07, 08.
Okay.
Just look at Joe Rogan, thinking about this. Oh, he did interact with him. He did befriend him after his conviction for sexual offenses in 2008. And doesn't the Peter Thiel stuttering just give away the game? When I was introduced to him, I was told that he was one of the best tax authorities in the world. I mean, just think of that. That's just the traditional narrative that we hear from guys like Leon Black, who gave Epstein $158 million to do his taxes. To do his taxes. The head of a global asset management firm, Apollo Global, one of the biggest in the world, I believe, at that time, needed Epstein to do his taxes. Just think of that.
Okay. And so...
But, you assume he didn't go to jail for that long.
Right.
It was probably not as serious as alleged. There was certainly the illusion that there were all these other people that I trusted. Reid, who introduced us, was... he started LinkedIn. He was, maybe too focused on business networking, but
Right.
But I thought he always had good judgment in people.
When the went down and Epstein gets arrested for the second time, were you like, oh, well, there you go?
I've thought about it. I thought a lot about it as a result. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Just think of that. The guy that headed up Palantir, the biggest data harvesting engine within the United States, had no idea who Epstein was, no idea of the breadth of his crimes, thought that they were less than they really were, when there were 40 victims willing to testify in front of him. And I get this. You're not going to learn that if you don't dig into it. But people of prominence have a responsibility to dig into this stuff when they're collaborating with figures like Epstein, where there was a long track record of sexual exploitation and a sweetheart deal, indeed. They were trying everything under the sun to bury it. But you're going to tell me Peter Thiel, the Palantir banner waver, had no idea? I'm sorry, man. This is a little bit more than unbelievable.
And thought about it, he did, because he was emailing Jeffrey Epstein a lot, meeting up with him a lot. Definitely sounds like they were very close, inviting him to the island. Basically, this guy's going to be here from Europe. Also, you should come this weekend. They were together all throughout New York, constantly messaging each other. It is not a good look. There is no question these two were friends. And I do not accept that the person who's effectively spying on all of us, he's got to deal with the military through Palantir, by the way, should be clear. He also, Palantir boys were put onto Fort Huachuca Air Base in July. We'll get into that later. And now we're supposed to believe that he just like, oh, I couldn't look in any further. I had no context to figure out what Epstein was accused of. And I decided to still be friends with him, despite all the allegations, despite him admitting to what he did, right? He caught a plea deal via Acosta, who was told to leave Epstein alone. That's if Acosta is to be believed, that's the reason why he had to basically give him a slap on the wrist. And we're supposed to believe Peter Thiel, with all of his resources, just went, trust me, bro. I'm not buying it.
Yeah, I'm not buying it either, especially because researchers found out that it was Alan Dershowitz. Speaking of Alan Dershowitz, earlier in this, confirmed that Epstein was likely working for intelligence service, both domestically and internationally. This is something that was broken by Glenn Greenwald here. It disclosed, I think, before that, is showing here this is what happened, is that Dershowitz was saying he remembered CHS remembered Dershowitz telling Alex Acosta, this is spelled wrong, the guy that said, hey, I was told Epstein's intelligence to lay my hands off, that Epstein belonged to both U.S. and allied intelligence services. It says this right here in the Epstein files. But hey, nothing to see here. Remember, no connections to Israel. That's buried. That's off the table. That's just anti-Semitism if you bring it up, right?
And this is now a major problem for J.D. Vance. It is. Just there's no other way to say it. J.D. Vance is going to have to answer for this. This is not going to be something he can wiggle around. And I don't think he is going to make a statement on Peter Thiel. I think that's going to be interesting. That is going to be very interesting, the implications of that. But also interesting that they threw Peter Thiel under the bus, because they're protecting the other homies. Like I said, I expect the Kushners to be in here. Obviously, his connections to the Mossad. I mean, there's a little bit. He's setting up meetings, Bibi Netanyahu, Ehud Barak's all over it. He's writing emails and making kind of some jokes, which suggest like about Robert Maxwell and things of that nature. But they've cleaned this up majorly. I also expected to see some other names, which would bring us a little closer to solving the Charlie Kirk murder, in my opinion. So we're getting something. We are not getting anywhere near everything. And that's why Thomas Massie is demanding for there to be more of a release. And also these should be unredacted. If you're talking about murdering people, we should be allowed to see that. We should be able to see exactly who is sending all of these emails when you're speaking about children and the things that you are doing to children in ritualistic acts.
Yes, and in fact, the DOJ is breaking the law by over-redacting the files, because the way that the law is written, they only have the ability to redact victim names, and they're going above and beyond that to obviously protect people of prominence who sent these messages. Some of them are either quasi-incriminating, reveal a darker side of the underbelly of the deep state and Epstein's criminal network, or make people in power look bad, and sometimes all three at the same time simultaneously. And we're just supposed to, as goyim, as people that are peasants, as plebeians, to have no problem with that, ask no questions about that. And get this, when it comes to Peter Thiel and his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, it's much broader than Thiel has ever admitted prior to this document drop. and much broader than we have often been told. And you can see that Gmail is this app that puts Jeffrey Epstein's email in a fashion where you can basically see it as if you were logged in as Epstein. I have it open right now, and all of these mails right here are either to Peter Thiel or about Peter Thiel, stretching from 2019 at the very end, I think, actually 2017. I think they're in the process of loading more, and I think there were more communications after that. But this goes all the way back to, I'm seeing some that are 2014, 2009, about Peter Thiel right here. All these emails show a long past and friendship, especially coordinating logistics around dates and meeting each other. You see that from the Epstein files. And the other thing you see is, and I'll show you this in a second because this is another revelation that shows lies on behalf of the Trump administration, is that Howard Lutnick lied about his relationship with Epstein. Now, it was well known before, actually not well known because of course they covered this up, but Lutnick was the next door neighbor of Jeffrey Epstein. He was right next to Epstein's Manhattan mansion that was given to Epstein by Les Wexner, the $77 million one that was completely unexplained wealth given to him. You know, he got power of attorney from Wexner. Well, Lutnick had always maintained that he broke off contact with Epstein in 2005. He made statements saying that he'd never be in a room with Epstein again, but we know from the emails that he was arranging contacts to meet with Epstein again in 2012. We know that from these releases. You can see it in them, showing that Lutnick lied. What do you know? He's the current Commerce Secretary, and he completely lied about his relationship with Epstein. Will he pay the price for that? No. Will he be asked to resign for that? No. Will he be impeached for that? No. He can just lie through his teeth, and we'll have no problem with that in the political establishment. Same thing with Kash Patel swearing in a committee that, oh, there's no evidence that he trafficked except to himself, even though we know from these emails in a former release, in leaks that show that the FBI themselves were investigating co-conspirators, one of which was Les Wexner, who they've still never questioned. He's, shacked up in Ohio. He's, I think, the wealthiest person in Ohio still. No evidence that the FBI's even questioned him. With Epstein's death came the death of that investigation to go broader than Epstein himself, outside of Ghislaine Maxwell. That's what you get from these criminal deep state goons in Washington, D.C. that have no care about transparency. They're anti-transparency. So while they hide the truth, they harvest our data through the NSA and through Palantir to create dystopian pre-crime schemes that they want to unleash on all of us. That's where we're at. I'm glad that Candace covered some of the most important revelations and important nuggets here. And I think there's a lot to talk about in the future going forward. Still a lot of documents. I think 3.5 million have been released, and there's set to be several million more. So there's going to be a lot to sift through. But what do you think? Do you think that these are important revelations? What have you seen here? What's being hidden? And what does this mean for American politics? Are anyone going to be able to trust the system anymore? It seems like there are people that are either cultists of either side or people that don't care that will. But dissidents paying attention to this know the ugly truth, and it just gets uglier with these releases. But let me know what you think down below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Also subscribe to Candace Owens. Great program, great segment. Really appreciate it. Also, if you like this video, please consider joining as a YouTube member down below. You can do that by clicking join, and doing that gains you access to all my videos before they go live to the general public on YouTube. So you'll be able to see that members only content. There's usually several videos to watch in advance of everyone else. And also, if you want a free copy of my first book, Compact of the Republic, click the link in the description below. That'll send you to a site. You just plug in your email. I'll send you a free copy of that. And look, I have a few demands of the regime. It's a criminal regime, and I won't budge from my demands. It's no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.